Lena stood at the entrance of the grand restaurant as the doors opened, and the Rivera family walked in with loud voices and shining confidence that made everyone look their way. The air shifted as if the whole room held its breath, wondering what kind of trouble they would bring tonight. Lena breathed slowly, her hands tight around the small notebook she carried, waiting for the moment they would notice her. The Riveras were known for their rude behavior and their love for showing off their money, and the father walked first, tall and proud, wearing a jacket that sparkled under the soft lights. The mother followed with sharp eyes, scanning the room as if everything looked too cheap for her taste. Behind them walked their daughter and son, both wearing cold smirks as if the night already bored them. The staff stepped back as the family moved toward the table reserved for them. A table none of the workers liked serving, because it always came with insults and tension. Lena walked toward them slowly, keeping her smile gentle, even as she felt a small fear growing in her chest. She had served difficult people before, but the Riveras were in a different league. She tried to stay calm, reminding herself why she was here and why this night mattered. She had been preparing for this moment more than anyone knew before she could greet them. The son snapped his fingers at her, calling her like she was a pet. The sharp sound made several customers turn their heads. The son laughed, saying she moved too slow. The daughter giggled and whispered something behind her hand. The mother stared at Lena from head to toe with a cold, judging look that made Lena feel as if she was being examined like an object rather than a person. Lena kept her voice soft as she welcomed them and offered menus, but the father interrupted her right away, raising his voice to complain about the lighting, then the chairs, then something else. Nothing was ever good enough, not because of real issues, but because he enjoyed watching people scramble for his approval. Lena listened quietly and promised she would adjust whatever he needed, even though she knew he would still complain. She stepped away to bring water, and the staff whispered behind her, not out of cruelty, but out of concern. Everyone cared for Lena because she treated them kindly and never complained, even when customers were harsh. Some believed she was saving money. Others thought she needed peace and a new beginning, and a few felt she carried a secret she never mentioned. When Lena returned with the glasses, the mother asked if she had ever considered finding a better job, or if this was the only thing she could do. Lena smiled gently and said she liked working here. The Riveras exchanged amused looks as if her answer proved she had no dreams. The son lifted his phone and began recording her asking rude questions, pretending it was for a small online joke he enjoyed making people feel small. Lena ignored the phone and focused on her work, moving with quiet grace that made some customers admire her even more. But the Riveras only grew louder. They joked about her clothes and her simple shoes. The daughter said she sounded too polite, like someone trying to pretend she belonged somewhere else. The father laughed and said she would probably cry if someone shouted at her. The mother nodded in agreement, enjoying every moment. Still, Lena remained steady. She placed the glasses gently and wrote their order with careful hands. Inside, her heart trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of something she had carried for months. She checked her watch and a spark of determination crossed her eyes. She knew the moment she was waiting for was near. The Riveras continued complaining about every tiny detail, but their voices were fading for Lena because her mind was focused elsewhere. She remembered her promise. She remembered the purpose behind her choice to work here. She remembered what she had prepared for this night, and she knew that time was almost here. She glanced toward the entrance, her pulse rising, a soft breath leaving her lips as she whispered to herself, "Just a little longer, then everything will change." She felt the weight of every insult, but she also felt the strength she had kept hidden all this time. She knew people saw her, yet no one knew the truth about her background or the role she would soon step into. The staff trusted her without understanding why, and the guests sensed something different about her calm smile that stayed strong even under pressure. Tonight, Lena stood near the Rivera table with a calm breath while the restaurant around her buzzed with quiet whispers. Everyone felt the tension rise the moment the rude family arrived. And now the whole room watched closely as their voices grew sharper and their insults grew bolder. Lena kept her hands steady, even when her heart felt heavy, because she knew this night was moving toward something important, something she had waited for since the day she first stepped into this job. The Riveras leaned back in their chairs, acting like royalty as they continued to question Lena with rude smiles that carried no warmth. The son lifted his phone again, pointing it at her face while asking how it felt to serve rich people all day. The daughter laughed and told her to speak louder, because she wanted her followers to hear the voice of someone who had no real future. The father asked if Lena understood what success even looked like, and the mother rolled her eyes as if Lena were simply too slow to understand their greatness. Lena stayed polite and gentle. She nodded and responded with soft words, but deep inside, she felt a quiet fire growing. She did not feel weak. She did not feel broken. She simply felt ready because she knew something the Riveras did not know, and the truth was slowly coming closer with every passing second. Manager walked by and tried to check if she needed help, but Lena gave him a small smile and a tiny shake of her head. She did not want him getting caught in whatever was about to happen. Some staff watched from a distance, hoping the Riveras would calm down. Others whispered about how brave Lena always seemed, even when customers treated her poorly. Everyone felt protective of her, though none understood why she carried such strong calmness in moments like this. Riveras placed their order in the most dramatic way possible. They shouted their choices with impatient voices and acted as if Lena was wasting their precious time, even though she moved with perfect speed and attention. The father waved his hand at her, like she was invisible. The mother scoffed at the small handwriting in Lena's notebook. The daughter whispered insults about her hair, and the son zoomed his phone camera close to her face, trying to capture every uncomfortable reaction, but Lena gave him none. Lena stepped away from the table to bring their drinks, and in the kitchen area, more whispers followed. Her chef said he had heard that Lena once lived in a completely different world, a world far from restaurants and rude customers. A young waitress said she heard that Lena once managed something powerful but walked away months ago. No one really knew the truth, but the staff all agreed on one thing: Lena was not ordinary. When Lena returned, she carried the drinks with steady hands, but the Riveras still found reasons to complain. The glasses were too cold, the napkins were too plain, the lemon slices were too thin. The family behaved as if criticizing her gave them some sort of pleasure, and the other guests in the restaurant could barely believe what they were seeing. Some wanted to step in and defend her, but Lena kept signaling them with gentle eyes, telling them it was all right, telling them she could handle it. But the calm in her eyes was not the calm of someone defeated. It was the calm of someone waiting, preparing, and counting down something unseen yet powerful, something that made her shoulders straighter even as the insults grew harsher. The son laughed loudly and asked her if she ever dreamed of being anything important, because he could not imagine someone like her doing anything meaningful with her life. The daughter announced that Lena probably lived in a tiny room somewhere, because she looked like a person with no future. The father asked how much money she made in a month, and then laughed before she could answer, and the mother asked if she ever felt embarrassed serving people better than her. Lena listened. She breathed. She held her heart steady. She reminded herself that she chose to be here. She reminded herself that she had a purpose. She reminded herself that the truth was coming. Then something changed. A small vibration buzzed against her hip. A message appeared on her screen. She glanced at it for half a second, but that was enough for her eyes to widen slightly. Her breath caught for a moment, and then she lifted her head with new strength. The message simply said, "It is ready." Lena placed the last drink on the Rivera table and looked toward the entrance, as if she felt someone approaching. The Riveras continued their rude jokes, unaware of the shift happening inside her, unaware of the truth that was slowly stepping closer. The door of the restaurant opened, and a soft, cold breeze entered the room. Many guests turned their heads first, then a few staff. Then Lena herself stood straighter as she saw a tall shadow appear near the doorway. The room grew quieter. The whispers stopped. The air felt heavy with curiosity, as if everyone sensed something important was happening. Lena breathed in deeply and whispered to herself almost silently, "It is time." Then she walked toward the Rivera table again, wearing the same gentle smile but now carrying a spark of power hidden just beneath the surface as the Riveras laughed, unaware of how quickly their world was about to change. Lena felt the air shift the moment the tall shadow appeared near the doorway, and the entire restaurant grew strangely quiet, as if something powerful had stepped into the room. She kept her breath steady, while her heart beat faster, not from fear, but from the sense that everything she had prepared for was now beginning to unfold. The Riveras did not notice at first because they were too busy laughing and insulting her, but everyone else felt the moment as clearly as a cold wind brushing across their skin. Guests near the entrance turned their heads and moved aside without being told. Staff paused with trays in their hands and watched with wide eyes. Even the music playing softly through the speakers seemed to fade behind the growing silence. Lena looked toward the door, and her eyes softened with relief, then sharpened with purpose. She knew who had arrived, and she knew this arrival would shift the night in a direction the Riveras could not imagine. Person who entered was a tall man in a dark suit with calm eyes and a serious expression. His presence carried quiet authority. He walked with slow, steady steps as if he owned every room he stepped into. He looked around, once taking in the restaurant and the people, then his gaze landed on Lena, and his expression changed instantly. His hard look softened into respect, and he moved directly toward her without a single pause. The Riveras finally noticed the silence and looked around, confused. The son lowered his phone, the daughter frowned, the mother crossed her arms, and the father raised an eyebrow, as if annoyed that someone else dared to attract more attention than their own family. But none of them understood what was happening. None of them noticed how the staff straightened their backs, or how a few cooks peeked from the kitchen doors with nervous excitement. Tall man stopped in front of Lena and gave her a small, respectful bow that made the whole room freeze. He spoke in a low voice that everyone could still hear, saying, "Everything is prepared, and everyone is ready for your signal." Each word was clear. Each word carried weight. Lena nodded gently, and the Riveras stared at them with blank faces, not understanding a single thing. Lena thanked him softly and then turned back toward the Rivera table, her steps calm, her posture elegant. The Riveras exchanged confused looks. The father leaned forward and asked, "Who is that, and why did he talk to you like that?" Lena only smiled politely, telling them she would explain very soon. Her voice was gentle, but something in her tone made even the rude family pause for a moment, as if a thin thread of fear had touched their hearts. The son tried to laugh it off, but his voice shook a little. He asked if Lena had hired an actor to pretend she was important. The daughter whispered that maybe the man was a debt collector who followed Lena here. The mother smirked, saying it must be someone trying to sell her something. But the father stayed silent, his eyes narrowed as he watched Lena more carefully than before. Something inside him sensed danger. Even if he did not understand the reason, Lena felt dozens of eyes on her as she stood beside the table, and the energy in the room kept rising like a storm, building quietly above the sea. She held her hands together and spoke politely, asking the Riveras if they would like anything else before she continued her work. They shook their heads, still confused, still trying to understand, but grow more uneasy the longer she stood there. The tall man remained near the doorway, watching calmly, like someone waiting for instructions from a leader, and everyone felt that Lena was that leader. Staff whispered among themselves. One cook said he recognized the tall man from a news article. Another said he once saw him in a boardroom picture online. The manager covered his mouth with his hand, as if trying not to gasp. He had worked in many restaurants and had never seen someone with that kind of presence walk through the doors for someone like Lena. Lena took a slow breath. She knew she had only a few minutes left before the next step in her plan arrived. She looked around the room, taking in the worried faces, the curious customers, and the silent staff. Then she set her eyes back on the Riveras, her voice gentle but unshakable, as she told them that she had something important to say later in the evening, something that involved the restaurant, something that involved every person in the room, including them. Riveras stared at her, even more confused. Now the son tried to make a joke, asking if the important thing was a new dessert. the daughter said maybe. Lena was about to quit. The mother said she hoped so because they deserved better service. The father, though, remained quiet, his jaw tight, his fingers tapping the table nervously. Even if he did not want to admit it, he felt something was very wrong. Before Lena could answer, the restaurant door opened again, and another figure entered, this time a woman in a formal suit holding a silver briefcase. She looked around until she found Lena, then she approached with quick, determined steps. The whole room watched as she opened the case to show a small tablet, glowing softly inside. She told Lena that the board members were online and waiting for her confirmation. A wave of shock spread through the restaurant. People gasped, people whispered, people stared at Lena now with disbelief and curiosity, while the Riveras looked from the woman to the tall man to Lena, trying to connect the pieces but failing again and again. Lena lifted her chin and breathed deeply, her calm face hiding the storm she carried inside. She whispered to the woman that she would speak soon, and then she turned back to the Riveras and gave them a gentle smile, a smile that made their hearts drop without knowing why, because they still did not understand that everything was about to change, and the person they insulted all night was about to reveal a truth that would silence them more completely than anything they had ever experienced in their lives. Restaurant felt like it was breathing, with everyone inside it holding the same worried air, while Lena stood calmly near the Rivera table, and the tall man in the suit watched from a distance like a silent guardian. The tension wrapped around the room like a tight string, ready to snap at any moment, and every person could sense that something important was about to happen, even if they did not know what that something was. The Riveras sat stiffly in their chairs, trying to pretend they were not bothered, but the uneasiness in their eyes betrayed them. The son stopped recording. The daughter lowered her phone. The mother shifted uncomfortably in her seat, and the father kept glancing at the tall man, as if he had seen him somewhere before. Everyone could tell their confidence was slowly slipping like sand falling through open fingers. Lena stood with graceful posture and a steady voice as she asked the Riveras if they needed anything else before she continued with her evening work. They shook their heads, but their confusion grew deeper, especially when the woman with the silver briefcase remained near the doorway, holding the tablet glowing with the faces of important board members who waited patiently for Lena's next move. The strange sight made the restaurant feel less like a dining place and more like a meeting room for something powerful and hidden. Staff kept stealing glances from behind counters and kitchen doors, whispering about Lena and who she might be. Some believed she was connected to something big. Others believed this moment had been building for months. The manager stood frozen near the bar, unable to decide whether he should approach or keep his distance, because he felt as if he had been working beside someone extraordinary without ever realizing it. Lena turned her attention to the tall man again, and he gave her a small nod, as if confirming that everything was unfolding exactly as planned. He then stepped forward with slow, firm steps until he reached the Rivera table. The family stiffened even more. The father asked in a shaky voice, "Who exactly are you, and why are you here?" But the man did not answer him. Instead, he stood beside Lena like someone waiting for her instruction. Because she was the one truly in charge, the daughter whispered that maybe Lena was dating a powerful man, and the mother smirked, thinking it explained everything. But the son shook his head and said that something did not feel right, because the respect in the tall man's eyes did not look like romance. It looked like fear and loyalty mixed together, something that made the Riveras shift again in their chairs, as if invisible hands had moved them. Lena breathed slowly, and then she told the tall man to prepare the room for the announcement. He nodded again and motioned to the woman with the briefcase, who moved quickly toward the center of the restaurant, placing the tablet on a small stand so the screen faced the room. The guests whispered loudly, now unsure if they should be scared, amazed, or simply curious, because the moment felt unreal, like a scene from a movie unfolding right in front of them. The father slammed his hand lightly on the table, demanding to know what was going on, demanding to know who Lena really was, demanding answers. His voice no longer carried the powerful confidence he once had. Now it sounded weak and desperate. The Mother grabbed his arm, asking him to stay calm. The son tugged at his sleeve, whispering that they should maybe leave before things got worse. But the daughter quietly said that it was too late to walk away now. Lena approached their table and stood in front of them, her eyes soft but filled with a quiet strength she had kept hidden for so long. She told them she was sorry for the confusion and that she would explain everything soon, but she needed to prepare the room first because everything she had been working toward was moments away from revealing itself. The Riveras could not understand why Lena spoke with authority, why she carried herself like someone who owned the room, why everyone else watched her with admiration and fear. Tall man cleared his throat and announced to the entire room that an important message would be shared shortly and that everyone should remain seated. The guests obeyed without hesitation. The staff gathered near the entrance, watching with wide eyes. The manager stood behind the bar, his breathing shallow as he waited for something he knew would change the restaurant forever. Lights dimmed slightly as the tall man adjusted the settings, and a soft glow rose from the tablet screen, showing the faces of several board members looking formal and serious. They greeted Lena when she approached them, and the whole room gasped. The Riveras stared with blank expressions, unable to understand how a simple waitress suddenly looked like the most important person in the building. The father whispered that this had to be a trick, maybe a prank, maybe a setup, but his voice cracked and his hands trembled because deep inside, he felt the truth pressing against him like a door about to burst open. He asked Lena again who she really was, but Lena only gave him a small, calm smile and stepped back toward the center of the room with the tall man beside her like a loyal shield. The woman with the briefcase handed Lena a small microphone, and the room fell into total silence. No one moved, no one breathed, no one blinked. The Riveras leaned forward, their fear growing heavier with each second, because they could sense the truth coming, and they knew it would change everything they thought they knew about the quiet girl they insulted all night. Lena lifted the microphone, her eyes gentle yet powerful, as the entire room waited for her first word. The Riveras sat frozen, unable to escape, unable to interrupt, unable to control what was happening now, because they finally understood one thing: Lena was not just a waitress, and whatever she was about to reveal would silence them completely and change the fate of the entire restaurant forever. Lena stood in the center of the restaurant, holding the small microphone while the soft glow from the tablet lit her face, and everyone waited in complete silence, wondering what she was about to say and why the important board members greeted her with such deep respect. She took a slow breath, feeling the weight of every watching eye. Then she lifted her head with gentle strength, and the room leaned forward because the calm expression she wore had changed into something powerful and sure, something that made the Riveras shift in their seats. With rising fear, Lena thanked everyone for their patience and said that she had something important to reveal, something she had kept hidden for months, something that would change how the restaurant worked from this night forward. Her voice, soft but strong, carried through the room like a warm, steady wind. The Riveras stared at her with confused faces, the father trying to understand how a waitress could speak with such authority, the mother frowning as if the truth annoyed her, the son gripping his phone with shaking fingers, and the daughter hugging her purse tightly as if danger surrounded her. Lena explained that she had chosen to work here in secret because she wanted to understand how the staff treated customers and how customers treated the staff. She wanted to see the truth without titles, without power, without anyone knowing who she really was or what she truly owned. A soft gasp moved through the room as she continued, saying that she had recently become the silent partner and main investor of the entire restaurant chain, a role that required her to understand the real experience inside each location, something she could never learn by sitting in a distant office. The manager covered his mouth in shock. The staff looked at her with wide eyes, and several customers whispered to one another, trying to make sense of how the gentle, quiet girl they had seen every week was actually someone who controlled the future of the entire business. The Riveras felt the ground shift under them, each of them stiffening as the truth settled around their table like a cold shadow. The father Swallowed nervously, the mother blinked rapidly. The daughter glanced at the door, hoping for a way out, and the son slowly lowered his phone. With trembling hands, Lena looked at them directly, her expression gentle but firm, as she explained that she had observed many kinds of customers during her time working here, and while most treated the staff with kindness and respect, there were some who carried cruelty like a trophy, dragging everyone down with their words and actions. She said she had seen how the Riveras treated not only her but also many other workers in the past, and she had chosen not to speak earlier because she wanted to see if they could show even a small sign of kindness, if they could treat someone as a human instead of a tool. Had not, and that truth hung heavy in the air. The mother tried to interrupt, insisting that Lena did not understand their family, and that they were only joking, but her voice shook and her usual sharp tone crumbled into nervous stuttering as the rest of the room watched with growing disbelief and hidden satisfaction. Lena continued gently, saying she did not wish to embarrass them, but she would not allow cruelty in any place she invested in, because every person in the restaurant deserved respect, every worker deserved safety, and every customer deserved a calm, peaceful experience without fear of being mocked or humiliated. Father stood halfway, trying to regain control, demanding that she stop making the scene, but his voice carried no force now because he could feel the room turning against him, and he could see that even his own children were afraid of what could happen. Next, Lena lifted her hands slightly, and the room fell quiet again. She thanked the staff for their patience over the months, for their dedication and their strength. She praised the guests who showed kindness, and she promised that the restaurant would grow into a safer, better place under her leadership. Then she turned back to the Riveras and said that their behavior needed consequences, not out of anger but out of fairness, because actions had weight and their choices tonight had caused harm that could not be ignored. She said their insults had been unnecessary and hurtful, and she could not overlook them. The son tried to apologize, stuttering and shaking. The daughter whispered that they did not mean it. The mother begged for understanding, and the father forced a smile, trying to act friendly now, but none of their sudden politeness could erase how they had behaved just moments earlier when they believed Lena was powerless. Lena listened to their hurried words with a calm that made them panic even more, because her silence held more strength than their shouting ever had. She thanked them for their apology, but explained that apology without change meant nothing, and she needed to protect the staff from harm. She announced that the Rivera family would be banned from all branches of the restaurant chain for 1 full year, a decision that made the room gasp again, not out of cruelty but out of justice, because everyone there had seen how the Riveras behaved. The Riveras sat frozen, unable to move, unable to argue, unable to hide from the truth that had finally caught up to them. Lena lowered the microphone, and the entire restaurant reacted with soft claps and relieved breaths. The staff gathered around her with gratitude in their eyes, and the guests smiled at her with admiration as she finally stepped away from the spotlight, knowing she had done what was right for everyone, because the quiet waitress they once underestimated had revealed her true power and her true heart, and the world around her would never be the same again.